Ooh, we got the multi-screen setup. I love it.
Oh yeah, just trying some new stuff, you know.
Yeah, I love it, man. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. This is my favorite time of the month. It is our monthly Coffee with a Mega interview series hosted by KW Young Professionals Triangle Chapter. A little bit of housekeeping. We are affiliated with Keller Williams, the largest real estate brand in the world. One out of every 5 houses sold in the US is sold by a Keller Williams agent. We have a specific community within Keller Williams dedicated to developing the next generation of leaders that we call young professionals. Common misconception is that you have to be under 40, and yet that's only for the leadership of the chapter. Really, anyone can join. So even these old folks like Ken here that we're interviewing today
No,
can join the
no.
KW Young Professionals chapter. In reality, it's a community of people who are building big businesses and bigger lives. And so we have chapters all across the country. I'm the president of our chapter here in the Triangle, which is the Raleigh-Durham metro area of North Carolina. We're about 3 hours away from Charlotte, easily confused. And we're a really growing area here. And we just love the motivation and the culture and the energy we get from these monthly interviews. We used to do them in person. And then during COVID, we switched to Zoom. And that allowed us this cool pivot to where now we interview people like Ken all around the country who are living big businesses and bigger lives. And Ken is the mega of the megaist of the mega agents we've interviewed so far. And so I'm excited to dig into Ken's story. If you're curious about Keller Williams, you can find it easily on the internet. If you're curious about joining KWYP, just go to kyp.org, find a chapter near you. And if there's not one yet, start a chapter. I know we've got Kyler here in Bozeman, Montana, who's about to launch that Bozeman chapter. I wish I had been part of our chapter launch years ago, and yet it's never too late to join. And so invest in yourself, invest in your community, and invest in people like Ken because it's going to change your life. So Ken, I'm excited to dig in, man. How about you?
Man, I'm excited. Let's get it.
So Ken has about a tight 40 minutes today. So we're going to really squeeze this one in today. Around 11:30, I'll try to leave some time for questions if you guys have any. And if not, we'll just keep talking until his time ends. So Ken, you are a native of Detroit. You started your business in Detroit and you had a pretty successful business there doing a ton of units, a business that a lot of agents would love to have. And then you moved. The thing that a lot of agents are scared to do. You moved to a completely different city, a completely different climate. You definitely upgraded from Detroit weather to Orlando.
Slightly better.
And then you've created this new business. You've relaunched with YouTube and done so many cool things. So what I want to do, a lot of these talks here, we talk practical, how to build the business, but we also love to talk mindset. Let's scale back a little bit. What was 18-year-old Ken thinking about? What were you going to college? Were you starting in real estate as a kid? Get us into your mindset there, and then we're going to go a little bit throughout your career.
Yeah, man, right out of high school, in high school, I was in college. I did dual enrollment. And so I was going to get trying to get my bachelor's while I was in high school. And then I graduated. I'm like, I don't know why I'm going to college because I know I want to be in real estate. I don't know how I want to be in real estate or what I want to do, but flipping sounds cool. And so when I was 18, this was 2003, 2004. And at the time, anybody could get a mortgage. Like you literally just said, like, I want to get a mortgage. And they said, well, how much money do you make? And people would say, how much does it take to get that kind of mortgage? And they said, cool. And so they would give it to you. And that's part of the reason we ran into a big issue, right? But I was hustling as an appraiser. I was doing some appraising and then flipping houses. And I did that for 5 years and did fairly well. Like I was, had multiple houses and everything was going really well. And then the market crashed and it was like, time to pivot because all of a sudden you couldn't flip houses anymore. Those mortgages completely went away. And in Michigan, you had to have a college degree to continue being an appraiser. And I didn't have a college degree. And so had to make a decision, what do I want to do? And so I had picked up my real estate license along the way just to sort of run comps on my own deals. And obviously for, being an appraiser made it easier. And so I got into real estate sales. So it was just cold calling banks for a couple years, sold a lot of houses, foreclosures, REOs, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, Fannie Mae, they all hired me to sell their houses. And that's kind of how I got my start.
How does a young 20s kid convince banks to trust him over all the other more veteran seasoned agents that are out there?
I didn't tell them how old I was. I was just, just cold calling. I would go on Google and say, Bank of America asset managers, pick up the phone. Hey, so you guys got a lot of foreclosures here. I know you probably already have a realtor in the area that you're selling them through, but I'd love to be your backup in case one of these other people flake out on you. And that was my pitch. And I just did that 20 or 30 times a day until I got a couple people to say yes. Wells Fargo was the first one. And it was like, yeah, that sounds good. We need somebody in your area. And they sent me over the contract and it was amazing. Like literally the next week they sent me 5 listings. And then it was like, snowballed from there.
Wow. So at the peak of that foreclosure REO type, how many units were you doing? How much volume? What was your income like as at that? And how old were you at the peak of all that?
Yeah. So 2000, call it 2010 was kind of the 2010, 2011 where it was the end of the REO run, if you
Mhm.
will. We had like 2 or 3 really good years as REO agents, and I was selling 100, 150 houses a year, just almost all REO. And so I had to have been 25, 26 at that time.
Wow. That's incredible. And then what was it like to leave that? What would tell me about that change? Were you married yet? Did you have kids? Where were you in life? And then why did you decide to leave such a big business that you had there in Detroit?
Yeah, it was, I got married in 2007. So right before all that craziness happened. And so my
Wow.
wife, she's my high school sweetheart, and we've known each other since we were literally kids. And so she's been with me to see the ups and the downs and the ups again, which is really cool. But yeah, so REOs went away, and I pivoted over to like old school door knocking, open houses, building a sphere. And then 2016 was the year that we came down here because we were doing really well in Detroit. And it was like, what if we could spend the cold months in Florida, get a second home down there, rent it out while we're not there, and then keep running Michigan. So we came down in 2016 to buy a second home. And my wife and I were sitting at the pool after we had just put a deposit on a townhome to buy here. And she was like, what if we just moved here? What if this was just our life? And I was like, oh yeah, that would be cool. She's like, no, I'm serious. What would we have to do that? I was like, I don't know. I'd have to start over again. And, I'm sure we could figure it out. And so after, a couple of days, we decided to pull our deposit from the townhome, put a much bigger deposit on a much bigger house, and gave ourselves basically 8 months to figure it out.
Wow.
And so we went back home in February of 16, and we made the move in September of 16 to start over, not knowing anybody and kicking it off from there.
So, and you had a team in Detroit at the time. And is it right? You were trying to do the reverse expansion where you keep Detroit running while you move, as opposed to trying to launch a new team at a remote location?
Yeah, that's right. So I was one of the first, I guess, to coin a reverse expansion. And so I took my lead buyer's agent, made him the team leader. And then we checked out. And so it was more, I was checking in once a week. We were doing one-on-ones. We were, trying to hold each other accountable. And it was it was fine. Like 2016, we closed like 40 million. 2017, we closed 25 million. And then 2018, he was like, I think I can do this without you. I'm leaving. I said, okay, cool. And he goes, oh, by the way, I'm taking this other agent, and this agent's quitting, and this admin's leaving. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. That's good times. And so I looked at my wife in 2018 and I said, we have to make a decision. Like, either we're going to go back to Detroit and try to like keep it going, or I need to go all in Orlando and just like burn the boats. And so I remember sitting there with like my license, because in 2018, like they send you the renewal, and it's like, hey, do you want to renew your license? If you do, you need to take Con Ed and pay this $200. And I was like, I'm going to let it lapse. I'm going to like clean break and take off. And that was when we started YouTube, and YouTube is quite literally changed my life.
So you pivoted from, you pivoted from appraisals and flipping into then listing REOs. That lasted a few years. Then you pivot into door knocking in Detroit, and then your brilliant wife gets the credit for saying, let's stay down here in Orlando. Let's relocate. Let's start over. Really a life by design. And then how did YouTube come along? Like, I know I've seen selfies of you back in the day. I think in your Detroit days with Gary Vee and with John Maxwell, you were hustling. You were going to conferences. You were meeting these big people. Was it Gary Vee? Is he who got you into YouTube? Or tell me about that journey.
Yeah, Gary Vee definitely, he helped me in the whole like document, don't create. And so when I started over in Orlando, which was like 2017 or so, I was like, listen, I don't know anybody here, but I know a lot of realtors. And if I could try to become like the Orlando guy in all of these realtors' minds, then I'll start getting referrals. And that was really like open houses, agent referrals is kind of what got me going here in Orlando. And then in 20, and so I just documented the process, Gary Vee style, like just say, listen, we moved here. Now we're going to Disney. Now we're going to the beach. We've got a lot of people moving here. I want to be your guy. And then I just try to give as much value as I could out to the agent community by teaching all the stuff that I knew. And through that, we started growing a team pretty quickly here.
So through agent referrals was a big one, it sounds like.
It was. Yeah. And it still is. I mean, last year, I was telling somebody the other day, we sent out $229,000 in agent referral fees.
Wow. So about a quarter million almost. Let's just
so
round it up to quarter million. And that means that usually that's about 25% of the gross commission that you received. So an agent sends you a lead in Orlando, you keep 75% of it and you send them 25%. That's just a thank you. Hey, that's business I wouldn't have had otherwise. And that's the thing that real estate agents love to do. It's a reason why so many of us are involved in young professionals. And pop quiz for you. Do you remember how you and I first connected? Like the very first like digital introduction of us?
Man, I think you won a book that I gave away.
Yeah. You slid into my email. I was like, who's this guy? And I tell you, I ruthlessly unsubscribe from agent stuff. It's not that I don't love them. Yeah. And it's only, I will usually look at the first one. And if the first newsletter looks good, I'm like, oh, you were one of the first ones. I was like, this kid, he's kind of a kid. I'm younger than you. What am I talking about? You're way ahead of me. But I was like, this guy's doing something cool. And you had like this cool photo at the bottom, I think in front of Disney, and you were like the Orlando guy. And you gave away a free book. And literally this morning in preparation for this interview, I took that book. If you don't know, I left it in my kitchen. Otherwise I'd have it with me. It's this like, it's a paperweight. It's a yoga block. Like this thing is massive. And it's called Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. You're probably familiar with his 4-Hour Work Week or his podcast, but essentially Tim Ferriss has kind of done what I'm doing right here with you. And he sent out this email blast to hundreds of influencers in every single industry, celebrities, athletes, everything, and asked them 5 or 6 questions. And the responses he got back, he compiled into this essentially like a guide to life. And so I will often, this year, I think I sent you a picture a few months ago. I've been trying to read one every morning. I haven't hit it consistently, but for me, it's just so fascinating to get a distillation of someone else's kind of their life thesis, if you will. And so, yeah, you sent out this agent newsletter and said, hey, first 5 people will randomly win this book. And so I replied, literally, I said, I want that book. And that was it. Yeah. And you sent it to me. And you and I had a phone call. I remember where I was sitting, because you said that you basically just found me by doing reverse like census data movement metrics. And so tell me about that tactic and how does that serve you with what agents and what markets you target for your agent referrals?
Yeah, so I think it was a little gray hat the way I was getting emails. I was just, using realtor.com and I had some census data, basically who was moving to Florida, and I could see all the different inbound places. And so we noticed that at the time, this is 2018, 2019. We've noticed that like a lot were coming from the Carolinas, a lot were still coming from Michigan, which funny enough, that's where I'm from, a lot from like the Chicagoland area. And then, and that's those, and a little bit from like New York, New Jersey. So I said, okay, I'm going to use realtor.com. And I had my assistant and we would just go plug, 100 a day from different cities into our CRM. And we would add a metro area every month. And then eventually I started teaching classes and I'd have, hundreds of people show up and I'd say, hey, listen, if I'm going to teach these classes for free, all I ask is that you send me the attendee list so I can add them to my newsletter. I promise it's going to be value packed and it's not going to be like, here's my new listing, here's my new open house. It's going to be giveaways that they'll enjoy, value that I've learned, mistakes that I've made, stuff that like literally has nothing to do. And I'm not going to ask them anything like a dollar wise, just to, again, keep me in mind if they know of anybody moving or selling in Orlando. And so we grew that list that's now up to 47,000 people. Wow. And it's been really good. And so, we just use Constant Contact to send that out. And now I do like a monthly, I usually go live once a month. We call it the Content Lab. And we talk a little bit about stuff that's working in real estate, stuff that's working in, I've got a friend of mine who they own a massive travel agency through podcasting. So I interviewed them, just different stuff, different insights that I can try to give, again, completely for free, just trying to be value in people's life. And so going back to the Gary Vaynerchuk, it's the jab, 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 right hook, right? Yep. If I can give you so much value for free, by the time I come around to ask for something, you're like, that's it? That's all you're asking? Yeah, of course I can do that. Wow. And so that's always been my goal.
So you relocated to Orlando, you built this really successful agent referral business based off of things like YouTube, teaching classes, giving away free content. And then at a certain point, what year would you say you really felt the hockey stick growth change? 2020, 2019?
Yeah, 2020 was it, man. So going back the progression of volume here, if you will. I don't remember the units off the top of my head, but volume was like 11 million, 25 million, 42 million. And then we then started, it jumped to like 94 million, 125 million. Then last year we closed just under 200 million. So big growth over the past 2 or 3 years. Really kind of being able to, for me, systematize what we do from content marketing perspective. We get a lot of YouTube leads, a lot of stuff from social media, a lot of stuff from our email newsletter. And so I would say in 2020 is when I really got very clear that we're a marketing media company that happens to sell real estate. And so, so this year, the goal is 300 million. So far, we're on track. That'll be roughly 550 sides.
Wow. When I hear that, there's a quote from a famous philosopher, Biggie Smalls, I believe, who said it: "More money, more problems." I might be getting the attribution wrong. How has doing this much business changed your life in a negative way? Like, what things have you had to adjust in your personal life and your family balance? What is that like? How do you handle all that?
Yeah, I really didn't get very clear on the family side until 21. I was like, hey, still working 7 days a week. Cause when we moved here, like it was grinded out, like, especially when my team in
Yep.
Detroit closed, I'm like, okay, crap. I really need to get serious about what I'm doing, where I'm going, and putting my time to use. And so I was working 7 days a week, open houses on the weekend, teaching, just doing everything I could. And in 21, I'm like, all right, so I'm not going to work weekends anymore. I'm going to get my Saturdays and Sundays back. And then from there, it's been like, okay, now Saturdays and Sundays I'm off. Plus, I need to start taking a long weekend every month. And then now I need to go on date night every week. And it's just been a little bit at a time. Just trying to ease myself out.
If you got, I'm going to mute everyone here. If you guys can make sure you're muted on the call, that'd be great. Appreciate that. Ken's delivering some great content. Keep going, Ken.
Yeah. And so then I think the hardest part for me is leveraging, not because it's not easy to hire, because at this point, like we're a talent magnet, which has been a lot of fun. But me letting go and me empowering other people to see their growth and knowing that they're going to go crush it based on me hiring good talent. That's been the biggest thing for me. And so figuring out what I'm good at, which is attracting talent, doing content, developing leaders. That's my whole job description at this point. I don't sell too many houses personally anymore, although I'll still sell one or two a month just to kind of keep relevant when I'm talking about content. But that's been the biggest shift in me, I guess, over the past 2 or 3 years.
Repeat those three. Your job descriptions boiled down to what 2 or 3 items was that again?
It's content marketing, talent attraction, and leadership development.
Okay, that's awesome, man. I want to do some rapid fire, and we're at 11:15, 11:17. I want to remind you, in about 15 minutes, we're going to open up to questions. Feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm going to try to keep an eye on our Facebook live stream as well. We got Ashton Pritchard over here saying bigger lives. We got Chad Jemison quoting you about being a marketing media company that happens to sell real estate. Chad's my buddy here in Raleigh. We're in bold together right now, which is fun. Awesome. All right, let's do some rapid fire. Thinking about leadership and the personal development side, just give me a few words. When you hear what I'm going to give you a few words, you give me a few words back. Okay, you ready?
Sure.
All right. Leadership.
Servant.
Failure.
Growth.
I'm going to go weird here. Death.
Life well lived.
Life well lived. As I read Tribe of Mentors, the book you gifted me, a lot of those people seem to be reflecting on their life and cutting through the BS and living their authentic life. How has that changed for you? How have you figured? I mean, I've seen you do photography. I've seen you play guitar. You're going to Disney all the time. Do you ever feel like you need to be a chameleon to market to the most people possible? Like, how do you boil down to your own identity and what's important to you?
And I've thought about this a lot. I think, it'd be so awesome to be the real estate agent for everybody and to grow a company nationwide. And I've thought about expansion, and I've thought about all of these other things. I could go to Tampa and kind of do what we're doing there. But like, for me, I would rather go super, super deep into everybody who wants to live in Central Florida. And so my mindset has shifted. Instead of just selling, 200 or 300 homes in Orlando and then going to Tampa and Jacksonville and Miami and then Dallas and Austin, like continue to grow. I'm just like, I want to sell 1,500 homes here, dominate, go really, really deep, and look at what are the other verticals that I can go into and then go from there. So that's kind of maybe the shift on who I needed to become.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that on the other verticals. I've seen you create the Orlando Reel. I see you investing in real estate. Tell me what your other things are outside of selling homes and building, the Pozek group. What else are you doing that keeps you busy?
Yeah, my wife and I, we try to flip, now we're doing more holds than anything, just for tax reasons. But yeah, so she helps me with that. My wife has helped me come in for a lot of our gifting program for our past clients in Sphere, and then she's helped us design the whole office out, and then she helps me with our flip. So we'll do 3 or 4 of those a year is kind of the goal for 2023 and beyond. And then we created a whole media company called the Orlando Reel, and we've got staff writers, and I've got a short form editor and a long form editor. And again, going back to being the media company that sells real estate, I said, okay, well, typically we've always heard that if your past client would use you again, the whole NAR stat that we all love to quote is like, people would use you again if they could only remember your name. And so the idea is like, how do you stay relevant in someone's life between the time they're ready to buy and 10 years later when they're ready to sell, and get all of the referrals in between. And I think as agents, we were like, oh, we're going to do our 33 touch or our 36 touch and the whole Keller Williams vernacular. And I think that most agents send garbage to their past clients in Sphere, which then you get unsubscribed and you really build no community. And so I came up with this idea of like, what if I could send out a twice weekly newsletter on top of the YouTube, on top of the Instagram, on top of TikTok, on top of all the other kind of stuff we're doing. But we had articles in there that was like, hey, if you're looking to just find a new speakeasy in town, or what's the new developments coming, or, we don't talk politics, religion, we try to stay as broad as we can with that stuff, but it's just really like what's coming to Orlando. And in that, hopefully we keep tight to our people. And what's been amazing is that our Sphere business and referrals have just skyrocketed, especially over the past 6 months, which I feel like we hit our trajectory, which has been really good.
When a few weeks ago, you were in Hawaii and we were going to do your interview last month. You're like, hey man, I'm off the grid. And I said, they have Wi-Fi in Hawaii, I think. But no, I love the way you're designing your life. So I want to ask you, maybe how has your big why shifted from Detroit to Orlando, now to the Orlando Real, investing, and when do you want to stop? Do you have a goal? Are you going to be out at 50? Are you going to be running this media company until you're Walt Disney and you retire the day you die? Like, tell me about what's next for you and what do you want for your kids, your family?
Yeah, man. I think, you said death and I said life well lived. And so that's what I'm after right now. And so it's, how can I impact the most amount of people? So that's my organization, which is continuing to grow, which has been a lot of fun. And then seeing what's possible is something like I'm really after now. Just because it hasn't been done here or anywhere else doesn't mean that it's not possible. And so we're just testing. And so one of the things like I tell my team even is like, I could very easily go buy a much bigger house, drive a Rolls Royce, and, wear every Rolex that exists. Instead, I'm investing a lot of that back into my people and just trying stuff to see what happens, and giving myself the opportunity to fail, knowing that in that I'm going to find something that works and then lean really, really heavy into that. And so that's what brings me joy. And so that's what I'm pushing into.
Can we dig into a failure of yours? What comes to mind when you think about something that failed, and what'd you do? What'd you learn from it?
Well, man, I mean, it's been a series of failures. I mean, going back to Detroit, the market shifts, and 2007, I'm newly married. My wife and I are like, my wife thinks she's marrying this like real estate mogul, and little did I know the market was going to absolutely fall out from underneath me. So we were in the middle of like 2 flips, which we ended up having to short sale. We had to sell our personal house. I had a car that was paid off and I had no money coming in. So we sold the car, went down to 1. I'm riding the bus from time to time. And then it got so bad to one place where like there were 2 weeks in a row where we're like, we can't afford groceries. So like we went to our church and asked if we could get food from the food bank. And that was by far the lowest that I had ever been.
Wow, dude, I just got chills, man. That's powerful stuff, man. I mean, Ken Pozek, who a lot of us see is like the mayor of Orlando. What is it? If Walt Disney's grandson sold real estate, right? That would that's Ken. And I mean, dude, first of all, thank you for that vulnerability. And this is a few years into your career. You've already had a lot of success with flipping houses and selling homes, right? So, yeah, I mean, Ken Pozek riding the bus, that's a powerful image. What does that look like now when you think back on that? Is that something that kind of haunts you? Do you reflect on that a lot, or do you just feel like that was part of the journey that's kind of healed now?
Yeah, I think, it's something that drove me from something that I was very ashamed of to begin with. And then something that I'm much more grateful for now. And so before it was like, don't tell anybody, hide this from everybody. Nobody needs to know you're in this situation. And now I'm like, well, damn, that was the fire. That was the pot that like, I was born out of that situation. And so my wife and I, we would say like, we've had really, really bad before, and it's probably never going to get that bad again. And so regardless of what we're dealing with right now, we can get through it. And that's kind of our mindset.
Yeah. Wow. We've got a few questions in the chat here I want to dig into real quick. Chris Mascarino, the founding president of the KWYP Cleveland chapter, who just actually handled a referral for some dear friends of mine. He said he's always curious what your logo means. Tell us about the pineapple. Right, right there.
So Orlando, if you go to downtown Orlando, there's this massive lake, and it's basically all of downtown Orlando surrounds this lake, and it's called Lake Eola. And the Lake Eola fountain, it changes colors at nights. It's just very beautiful. And this is the Lake Eola fountain, and I just wanted sort of like a circular logo. And if you think Orlando, you don't really think palm trees. You might think Florida palm trees, but Orlando's that's not. It's just a metropolitan area,
Yeah.
and so I knew like local Orlandoans would know what this is.
Yeah. It's a little dog whistle. It's like people get it if they get it. If you know, you know.
You get it, you get it.
Yep. David Ostrander asked, did Ken use the MREA model to grow a team or do it differently since he is more media focused versus real estate focused, specifically with hiring people? Did you follow the model? What is your relationship? I know earlier you mentioned agents following the KW model like verbatim. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hired assistant first. So I know a lot of agents hire agents first or buyers agents first. I still think that that's the absolute wrong way to go. So I would say levels 1 through 3, I followed the model and then I kind of deviated from there. My P&L looks very, very different than most people's because our lead cost and our marketing cost is actually really, really low percentage wise. It's under 5%. But our staffing is maybe on the higher side because I have editors and writers and all of that, right? It's not so full blown when you think about it from a net perspective. Actually, I know for a fact that our net is significantly higher than most people's because we don't have Realtor.com and Zillow and all these other really, really high referral fee kind of portals that we have to pay because YouTube. I shoot a video and then I get leads from that forever, and so our lead cost is really, really low. So that's kind of the way that we've gone.
One of the questions that I love from Tribe of Mentors, Tim Ferriss asks people, if you could have a giant billboard, what would you put on it? Now, you actually do have a billboard in Orlando. So let's talk about you're 70 years old. You want to put something out there that inspires people. What does your billboard say?
That's a great question. Something along the lines of like, they don't matter.
Who's they?
Everybody that's not you. Meaning like, I think that most people do things for other people. They act a certain way. I mean, that's part of the reason, like it's like an epidemic in our industry of like people trying to show that they're amazing, or, you know, they say focus on GCI instead of net income, or they focus on awards instead of impacting lives. And it's very, very easy to get caught up in what's important to everyone else instead of worrying about your journey. So maybe to refine that, it would be like, you know, worry about your journey would be what I would go after.
What does, I know you've very much reinvented yourself with fitness. You and I talk about how Chris Pratt is an influence to both of us. Granted, he has quite a few millions worth of dollars and trainers and nutritionists that he can dedicate toward it. What is, I want to ask about physical fitness and mental fitness. What are those two things? Dig into those however you want.
Yeah, I think, so for me, physical fitness begets mental fitness and mental health. I think, you know, it's very easy to be tired and depressed and have high blood pressure and all these other things. You can't show up for your people and you can't show up for yourself and your family without being really well, like taking care of yourself. And so through COVID, I always say like COVID was both the best and worst thing for me, because obviously there was death and there were so many, you know, things that happened through COVID, but it was probably the best part of my life. I got to stay home. I saw my kids a ton. I worked out every single day and I started getting my food, my nutrition in check. And so even today, like you can find me over on MyFitnessPal. I log what I eat. I used to be like, you know, really, really nuts about it, but like, you know, I still log everything that I eat so I can mentally know how I did for the day and hold myself accountable. And so I lost like 50 pounds in 6 months and I've kept the majority of it off. And yeah, so that though has now made me like my sleep is better when I actually do sleep, but I don't need as much anymore. I wake up refreshed and ready to go. I pop out of bed and then I'm just more present in meetings, and because I'm much more sharp and all of that sort of stuff. And so from a mental health perspective, you know, I think that slowing down again, understanding why you're doing what you're doing is really important. And then daily growth. So for me, I don't listen to the news. I don't, you know, like, although I'm a media guy, I'm really focused in on what can I do for better personal development. And that's actually part of our team, like culture. Like when somebody joins the team, they say, why would I join the Pozek group over somewhere else? I'm like, well, what's important to you? And it's funny because most of the time it's either one of two things why people reach out. It's either I need leads, I don't know what to do, or I really want to grow as a business person. And the person who says that they want to grow as a business person, that's our people. And so we slow down and we say, listen, like we do book club together. We're focusing in on your why. We're focusing on your 1-3-5. We're focusing in on a whole balanced life. And when we start going through and walking through the path of what it looks like to join our team, if there are people, like they're bought in from the day one. And it's been really cool.
What 2 or 3 books would you give out the most frequently? What are the most inspirational books you want people to absorb?
I think, man, it depends on who they are and what they're doing, but Atomic Habits is probably my favorite book at this point. It's so easy. Like the 1% rule is amazing. I think the one thing, like, even though it's a Keller kind of book or whatever, it's like one of the biggest, fastest growing business books of all time. I think that those are the 2 that I give away the most.
Well, and the one thing too is not just a book. I mean, there's a whole community, and Jay Papasan and Jeff Woods have created a podcast and a whole company out of that. And so that's another amazing, inspiring, group to brand to follow. But yeah, just because it's Keller doesn't mean that we regurgitate it verbatim. I mean, it's popular for a reason. Keller Williams is huge for a reason. Speaking of, you had a little detour away from Keller Williams and came back. What can you tell us about that? What was it, 8 or 9 months with another brokerage? And by the way, we're not here to put down any brokerages. I'm more interested in you as a business owner and the decisions that you make. So if you can dig into that with us.
Yeah, for sure. So we left in July of last year to go to a real broker. I had a lot of friends of mine that were content creators, YouTubers, that were over there. And I was like, that's the community that I want to be a part of. But really it was like, I was also getting, like, in the back of my mind, people were like, listen, it's a revenue share model like EXP. You can get in basically, think what would have happened if you went to EXP year 1 and you got 1,000 people in your downline. What would that do to your life? And that seemed really attractive to me. And so I joined. Very shortly after, I had hundreds of people in my downline making, I don't know, 20 grand a month from rev share, which for most people is a lot of money. But for me, it was like this massive distraction because all of a sudden I realized that a lot of these rev share companies, and again, we're not bashing anybody, EXP, LPT, Real, Fathom, there's like a bunch of these models out there that are rev share, but many of them don't actually offer value. And so you become the value. Like you become like the people that are joining, they're joining because of you. And then they expect you to be on attraction calls and, hey, can you got a minute so that I can hear about your camera setup and your studio setup. And I found that I was spending more than half of my time in attraction mode and helping people that had joined because of me. And I had to have a really come to Jesus, come to Ken meeting. I don't know. I was just like, why am I doing this? What's important to me? And kind of very, very much so got clear that the thing that mattered most to me was growing my team, growing my brand. And I was actually losing money by spending half my time on the other stuff. So
you made a business change, and it within a few months resulted in $20,000 in monthly income. And that became a distraction. And then what was it? Were you embarrassed to come back to Keller Williams? Did you feel like, what are people going to think of me changing my mind like this or something? Tell me about that decision.
Yeah, I emailed Gary actually. And I was just like, I think the subject line was like, hey, Gary, you were right. So I knew he would open it.
Yeah, he's a busy man.
And then I was like, hey, so, hey, you told me that it was going to be a distraction, and people tried to tell me that it was going to be easy. It was not easy. And if I'm going to choose how I'm going to grow, I just really want to focus on my team. I don't really have an agenda here. I just wanted to tell you that you were right. And he emailed me back within like 15 minutes and was like, hey, we should jump on a Zoom and talk more about it. So I unpacked it or whatever. And he's like, listen, at least now, like you would have always wondered, what happened, what if, but we'd love to have you back. And if you do, I think that this is going to be really good for you. So I guess he helped me kind of unpack a little bit of the concern and made me feel very welcome. And the amazing thing was, like, everybody that that I thought would be a little upset at me or whatever, they welcomed me back with open arms. So it's been really good for me.
So that means we can officially quash any rumors that you were bought back or there was any sort of gamesmanship going on between brokerages here, right?
No, I love that question, because nobody's asked me. Like, everybody asks me in my DMs and never has the cojones to ask me via live. So thanks for this.
Of course.
This is interesting. So, like, people were like, oh, what kind of check did you get offered to come back? I'm like, I didn't at all. I had some people like very much so on the other side saying like, hey, don't leave. We can try to make this even better for you if you stay. And I was like, it's just still not right. No, that the opportunity was just coming back. I mean, here's the thing, man. Like I think that if I can provide enough value from a top-down level in a group setting to KW, that we're going to get taken care of more so than anything on agent referrals. I was getting an agent referral a day from KW before I left. And like anybody, like people want to refer within their company. You know,
of course.
If you're listing in Raleigh with Keller Williams, you don't want to go refer to Compass in Florida. Like you're like, if you can find a really great KW agent, it just makes it more seamless for the client. So we saw our agent referrals disappear and a lot of other things. And so we come back and started providing value again. And all of a sudden we're back up to getting, you know, agent referral almost every day. So that's worth more than a check. And I also think that like a lot of these people that take a check, now you're beholden to that person. And I want to be as independent of a player as I can be.
Yeah. Well, and in a sense, you did get a check, not from Gary Keller, but in the sense that you were literally losing money when you were at this other company, because you're all of a sudden kind of a puppet, or you're a poster boy. And it's almost like you're one of the leaders of the company while also trying to lead your own business. And so it makes sense that you made the right decision for yourself. And, you know, the right decision could have been to stay too. Like I said, this is not to bash any company, but what I hear is you were really clear on who you were. You're really clear on what your value was. And also you knew your numbers too. I mean, you could not have made that decision if you weren't tracking your numbers. It's something that I struggle with, something that I'm actively trying to get better at. Speaking of that, as a father to a soon to be 8 and 5-year-old girls, I know you have little kids. What's it like to be a dad? What do you want to impart on them? How do you want to grow them? Do you do affirmations? Like, what does it look like? What do you want them to say about you when they're 20 years old in college, talking about their dad?
Yeah, I think encouragement is the biggest thing for me. I think I really slow down to make sure that they understand that it's totally okay to make mistakes, and I want them to try as much stuff as possible. I think that exposure for anybody in the world, but especially for my kids, is something that I'm after. And so I want to expose them to new stuff, new ways of thinking. You know, I grew up in a very like, this isn't a religion versus not religion kind of household, but it was like, I grew up in a very religious household that it was like, it's this or nothing. Don't ever think about anything else. Don't ever question anything else. And I think that that's a poor way of thinking. I think that if you're like, hey, you know, if you want to be in business and be a business owner, why? If you want to work for somebody and go to college, why? If you want to live here, like, let's unpack this, right? Let's experience a bunch of things so that you, at least, you know, in your heart why you're doing something. And so that's something that I think our North Star with our kids is just like, try stuff. If you don't like it, totally fine. It's not a failure. You tried. And the failure is really when you just like get so honed in and don't open yourself up.
And your role is to be the safe space for them when they do fail or when they succeed, to come back and get that encouragement.
That's right.
That's fantastic, man. I promised Ken we'd be out of here in a tight 40 minutes. So I've got one more question, and then I'm going to let you leave people with how they can find you if they want to send you a referral. A lot of our audience is the KW Young Professionals community. It's often an agent who's making their first hire of an admin, or they've got a small team and they're just trying to pivot. They're trying to get that hockey stick of growth. What 2 or 3 parting thoughts can you leave for that agent who wants to pick your brain? Ken, how did you do it? What would you tell me to do? How do you help someone break through that ceiling of their next level of achievement?
Yeah, I think leverage is it, man. So if you are thinking about hiring, I think most people are like, oh, I can't take on a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 salary. I just can't afford it. One of the things is like, put away 3 or 4 months of salary, because if someone's not paying for themselves after 30 or after 90 days, it's probably the wrong hire anyways, but you're not committing to this person for the rest of your life. You'd want to, right? I mean, hopefully that by the end of 90 days, you're good to go, but it's not like you got to go save 50 grand before you're ready to go. I mean, that person's job is to make sure that you can go lead gen more, get in front of more clients, sell more. And so that's it. But slowing down and not just hiring anybody, hiring to the personality type, whether that's going through CV, but just getting very, very clear on what you're going to have that person do, so that day one, when they come in, they're jumping in right onto that. Right. And when you first start out, like, you're not going to have their job description and their completely daily tasks and everything already figured out. You're probably going to do that together. And you're going to say, hey, this is what my day looks like. I want you to take this off my plate. And then I need you to take this off my plate. And after 30 days, they're going to have kind of their job description figured out. And then now it's their job to own it and run, so that you can continue to go sell more. And so, so that's it. I think it's a 3-step process. Slow down and hire the right person. after you've saved a few months of their stuff, of their salary. And then 3 would be lean in on those people to go sell more. And then from there, it just kind of starts snowballing.
If anyone wants to go down that path, I highly, highly recommend the Keller Williams Leverage series. It's I believe, a 2-day course that I took last year with Jonathan Dupree. Amazing course. It talks you how to identify and attract and then hire that talent, how to like select the right candidate, and then how to go through their 30, 60, 90, which refers to the first 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And if you're doing those checkpoints by the end of 90 days, like you said, Ken, you'll have a great idea. And if not, it gets a lot harder to fire someone after 90 days because it gets real awkward. And so, Ken, we could talk for hours. I cannot thank you enough. I know you're super busy. We're going to get you out of here. If anyone wants to send you a referral, if they want to follow you on YouTube, if they want your agent newsletter, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can email Pozek at pozekgroup.com. That's how you get on the newsletter. And then if you want to just follow me over on Instagram, along the way, I'm sure you'll find a referral or 2 to send my way. My Instagram handle is at Ken Pozek.
Ken Pozek from Orlando, Florida. Thank you so much, Ken. My name is Patrick Madigan. I'm the president of our KW Young Professionals chapter here in the Raleigh-Durham metro area. On behalf of all of Keller Williams young professionals who've been watching and chatting and sending me texts here during this interview, I want to thank you for your time, man. We're excited to have you back with KW and excited to see your growth. I'll see you on YouTube, man. Thanks so much.
Appreciate you.